course, is a reference to the video that we dropped yesterday about Dustborn. So let's get into that, because I had the I was going to say privileged, but I reached out to the Norwegian Film Institute, who have done the bulk of funding for Dustborn, which is a Norwegian game from Red Thread Games, which is run by a former Funcom employee called Ragnar Tørnquist. Full disclosure, I have met him in the past. I don't know him personally. Only briefly had like a pint with him more than 10 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. I was in the Norwegian developer scene. Didn't know everyone there so much, but many of the names in Norwegian gaming I will actually have met at some point, including Kaja Hensch Dyrli in the Norwegian Film Institute. So when this whole thing went down and I learned of Dustborn in the first place, courtesy of WDW Pro, who alerted me to the story, I knew exactly which person to go to in the Norwegian Film Institute to learn more about the funding.
Only
I also
on Midnight's Edge.
So like I said, a small country and small world. And Tom, I put the story in the private background there, because Bounding into Comics, they did a fantastic write-up of this story, where basically I prepared a few questions in advance pertaining to exactly how it was that Dustborn was allocated support in the first place, and a few other questions which led to, have there been any kind of plans to make any of these companies that you fund self-going, or are you just planning on funding the Norwegian gaming industry forever? Because as it is right now, the Norwegian game industry, and I use that term lightly.
Sorry, Bounding's website sucks. I can't get it to show up anymore better than that. That's horrible, but yeah.
Oh, well managed. Is that basically the entire industry, or the entire scene, apart from Funcom or one or two others, is artificially being maintained by government funding. And I think that's really bad, because I'm not sure that the games that the Film Institute, the Norwegian Film Institute, chooses to fund represents the best of what these developers actually can do, and certainly not what the market would like. And what stood out to me the most, and this is kind of like the thing I was able to get out of the Film Institute, because I had very specific questions and I got nothing but very generic answers. But what they doubled down on twice, though, was that they believed that Dustborn had market potential, which clearly it didn't. So, Paul, you saw this video, and this story from Bounding into Comics basically just summarizes the highlights of this video. But you saw it. What did you think about it? And are you impressed with my nation's gaming industry? Does it in any way remind you of your nation's film industry?
That's what I was just going to say, is that our two nations are very similar in that both governments stick their fingers into creative efforts, right? I mean, to a certain degree, we wouldn't have any creative industry in this country unless 3/4 of it, maybe more, was government funded, right? I mean, how else would we have, indigenous pottery making if it wasn't for the federal government? So, I mean, the reach is broad and wide. And I'm not entirely certain that we fund video games in this country, but I'm not surprised. And no country should be in that business. I think that's what you're getting at, right?
Well, kind of. Like, I don't mind them funding video games in principle, but what I mind is the way that they do it.
Well, government should not be picking winners.
No, I agree completely with that, but they're not even doing that. Instead, what they're doing is that they're making potential winners into welfare clients because they're supporting
Yeah.
games that don't have any commercial potential, which means that these companies whose games they're funding, they can never get that massive commercial hit, which means that they in time would be self-reliant and not need any funding. Like, for instance, Funcom. I mean, they have some good years, they have some bad years. They also get support from the Norwegian Film Institute, but that's a bonus and an optional extra. They don't need it. It's not as if that company is going to go under if suddenly the Norwegian Film Institute decides that, we don't want to support this Dune game. You'll have to manage without. They'll manage without. They have other sources of revenue. But for smaller indies, who have ambitions about making, say, for instance, double A games. They can't manage without. Even for single A games with the developers that maybe will spend a year on doing that, they need some kind of revenue in order to do it. Many of the people that do this as a passion, they have other careers or they have to pursue other careers because they have bills to pay. So I
Right.
kind of like understand, and I'm fully supportive of them funding operations for a while for a company to get off the ground, see if they actually have the vision and the right read of the market, that they're able to actually grow a successful business that can hire more talent. I'm all in favor of that. What I'm not in favor of is basically just picking some random games out of seemingly arbitrary criteria that they can interpret however the hell they want to fund certain games for years on end, keeping a company artificially in business, and then that game comes out, doesn't really do any well, because maybe they funded the wrong game to begin with. Maybe this wasn't the game that should have been made. What happens then? Well, now the studio, they have made a game, but it didn't earn anything. Normally, they would have to choose and support a game that would fund their next venture. Now they're still dependent on government welfare in a sense, just to continue what they're doing. So I
So
think kind of like hamstrung what should have been a small but niche but possibly thriving industry. And I think that's not happening because of the Norwegian Film Institute.
Well, okay. So one thing that the Canadian government, I think, did fairly well was just offer tax credits, and well, the Quebec government offered massive tax credits to have game developers all over the world set up shop in Montreal. So in many ways, that's the smarter way to do it, is that you had to take a hands-off approach. You're not giving money directly to the shops, but you get world-class game developers setting up shop in your city. And that, to a large degree, was good, except that also gave birth to Sweet Baby Inc. from Montreal, and Ubisoft is in Montreal, and they're doing their stupid stuff. So, I mean, that worked for a while, at least. And that was great for programmers in Canada. That was a really, really good program. I don't think governments should be betting on game companies. So, I mean, and a couple more things I want to add is that, let's say you're a bunch of people and you have vision for a game, and you go, okay, this is basically out of our league. If you're clever people, go off and make a small game and get that to make money. And then, if you're creative, then you can be creative under multiple auspices that have nothing to do with the vision that you have for your ultimate game. And as you build revenue and you build your team, then and you build your business, then you can go for the game that you want. I don't like this approach where they're going for government funding to create this a game that nobody knows anything about. Now, that being said, whenever I pitched one of our games at the game development conference in San Jose, we already created a prototype that people could play to get an idea of what the game would be like. So did this developer create a prototype and show the government and say,
I
okay,
would imagine so, because very typically, by the time you go to the Norwegian Film Institute and you present your presentation, it's enough that you have concept art and stuff like that. But if you do have a playable demo, so much the better. There's no
but
guarantee that that's going to help, but very often they will have a playable
you know
demo.
what? For something that's as intersectional as this game, I would say that that would be what the government was excited about, and all they had to do was have some shitty concept art. I don't think they needed to have any kind of game playing demo to sell this, because the idea of something that is so diversity infused would have really excited all the communist government apparatchiks, right?
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I'm inclined to agree with that. I don't know that for a fact. They will, of course, say that it was a holistic assessment, which meant that they decided to support this game. But I'm inclined to agree with you. Because they have like a rollating panel. But I have seen a couple of those panels in person. And they seem to have a way of picking people that fundamentally think alike.
Yes,
Not
of
a
course.
whole lot of diversity of opinion. On certainly not the panel that I have seen. It's not like, wow, suddenly you have like this one maverick who is based. I have never encountered a panel where that is the case.
Right.
So I think that there's something in the selection process that the people that gets to be on the panel in the first place, they may not be part of the apparatchik, but they have the right opinions.
Well, and this reminds me of a pitch we made. We went to the Bamp School of Multimedia many years ago while we were doing video games and pitching them. And Banff is it's a resort in the mountains in British Columbia, absolutely gorgeous. And we saw a pitch from a group about a bunch of dolphins that you play dolphins that save the world from its ecological disaster. And the audience was practically weeping. So not only were the organizers part of this milieu, so was the audience that we were sitting in. Then we showed our game, which was about, miners that, miscreants on Earth that get their brains scooped out of their heads and sent across the universe to be stuck into mining robots to fight each other on a mining planet with lasers and everything. And the audience went cold. Like, wait a second, we have a fun game. We're scooping brains out of people's heads, sending them across the universe, and then killing people. Killing robots. That's fun. No, they were absolutely aghast, and they just gave us a brutal assessment. But they loved the dolphin game that saved the world from ecological disaster. They were creaming themselves. So
yeah, and I think everything. Environmentalism,
yes.
ecology. Yeah.
So we experienced this. This would be back in 1995. We were experiencing this nonsense. So as long as if something has a government funded anything, it's going to be twisted in one direction.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And this is kind of like the thing.
That was fun.
You can't build a gaming industry in Norway the way that they're doing it. And indeed, they haven't, because the moment they withdraw funding, Funcom is going to remain, Audience is going to remain, one or two more is going to remain, everyone else is going to collapse in a matter of weeks or months. And that's after 15 years of funding. Then something is very wrong.
Maybe I can approach them with my brain scooping game idea.
Yeah, try it. You just have to have the right pitch. If you try to write to brain scoop conservatives, I mean that might be something
Ah, there you
that
go.
they'll appreciate more.
That's a good idea. We're
Yeah.
sending only Republicans out into the universe.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. So yeah, and
So
we also had a couple of questions and comments about this. Let's see here. I saw Accident Seller, who is Norwegian even, says for 50 Norwegian krona. Your Dustborn video is good, but all the cheesy stock footage is distracting. It looks out of place and cheapens the video and message. Just my 2 cents. Yeah, I think that may be because you are Norwegian. And this one is probably very, very much closer to home than what we usually cover here. But the alternative would be just to have like some random gameplay in the background. I think that for everyone else who's watching, chances are it's as informative as usual. And Accent Seller also follows up with another 50 Norwegian kroner. So thank you for the support. Regarding the stock footage, when you talked about that woman from the Norwegian Film Institute, there was video of a woman on the phone. I thought that was her, but no, it was just more stock footage. Yeah, no, Kaja Hennes Dyrli doesn't look like that. But I do believe that the attitude that was expressed by the woman probably is indicative of what Kaya may really have felt when I called.
I have a question to you, Andre. How many of the actual films, forgetting about games right now, how many of the actual films that the NFI put their money in? Because we have, the National Film Board here in Canada. How many of those movies actually become globally popular?
There's a few. There's a few, actually. Troll Hunter. That was funded by them.
Okay.
Yeah. Same with, there's a couple of like big Norwegian disaster movies, like The
Nice.
Wave, as some may have heard about. That's theirs. There's a sequel to that, where there's an earthquake hitting Oslo. It's another one of theirs. And quite a few others. So, like most big Norwegian movies, they have funding from there. So that's kind of like why I'm not going to attack their model too much.
So they do fund populist movies, which
They do.
Okay.
They do. They fund both small and artistic, but they also fund big and huge. Like and not just Norwegian. Like for instance, last year's Mission Impossible with Tom Cruise stuff, they co-funded that because part of that is filmed in Norway,
Right.
which means that tax credits and stuff like that were given. Right. Same thing with the most recent James Bond movie, where he suddenly is in like this amazing landscape, also in Norway with cameo from the Norwegian national TV and stuff. So I'm not necessarily attacking the film division there, which I think are doing a fairly decent job all in all. I'm sure there's plenty of things that can be better there as well, but they have gone better as the decades have gone. The one that basically needs work right now is their video film department, which I think is crippling the Norwegian the video game industry. But the films they fund, I don't have too big complaints.
Yeah, Telefilm here. I mean, apart from Blackberry and maybe another film about a tornado here in Canada, they just don't tend towards populist movies. For instance, they would never fund a Mad Max. It's not, they don't do fun stuff, at least in English Canada.
Yeah, so. No, I see that. And there was a time when the Norwegian Film Institute would absolutely not fund stuff. But then there was a time when that changed. And that was the time when Norwegian movies started actually making international impact here and there. So yeah, can't complain too much. And then Tom prepared a comment from the Rumble side of things, with Doug 1985 EA saying, "Paul, a few people created a game, I guess, called Grand
Grand
Theft
Theft Auto.
Auto,
Yeah.
and it immediately exploded in popularity. A pocket amount of people did this, which is crazy."
Yep. Yep. That's the beauty of games, is that can still be done. And especially with the game engines right now. I mean, there are game engines which are free to develop and you only pay once you start selling. You don't even have to create a game engine.
Yeah, they're unreal. Let's put it that way.
Yes, they are.
This clip was taken from Midnight's Edge in the Morning, which streams live every Monday, Wednesday and Friday at 9 AM Pacific Time on the Midnight's Edge main channel. There you can send in your live questions and comments before clips and full stream replays are uploaded to Midnight's Edge live archives. We are also on Twitter, Rumble, Odyssey and Facebook, so smash that like, help share, subscribe and join us.